Hi there, friends. Welcome to another episode of our weekly Bible study. I'm Scott, lead pastor at First Christian Church, fccgreen.org, joined by
Tyson Hodge, just boring average guy.
What's your title going to be here, Bob?
Hey, I'm the most boring.
Most boring.
I'm Bob.
I'm Bob.
Bob.
That's solid. So, campus pastors at First Christian Church, and we are doing week 34 of Exodus, and we are going to go through Exodus 20, verses 12 through 17. And I feel like I'm missing something. Is there something else I'm supposed to say?
Let's just say it when we remember and just keep rolling.
Apparently, that's what we have to do.
Okay.
Regardless,
We just got to
at this point.
keep on rolling.
Yes. So, Exodus 20, 12 through 17. Who's reading?
I got it. I think, did you read last time?
I did do it last
All
time.
right, I got
You're
it.
up.
We got to make sure we're
Yeah.
even on it. Huh?
Yeah, got to be fair.
You're up, Tyson.
Exodus 20, 12 through 17. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's.
All righty. So, second table, second half of the Ten Commandments, Commandments 5 through 10. These are the horizontal commands. First for our vertical, relationship with God, relationship with one another. Context, anything we need to remember?
They're at Mount Sinai.
They are.
Yeah.
These are the words of God
They are.
Yeah.
from his own mouth.
He spoke them,
Wrote them in stone.
wrote them. They're supposed to be permanent.
Permanent.
This is like the peak of all the thunder and the lightning and the smoke building up, and then it's like boom, God gives us these 10 commandments. Which one will, for the next several books of the Bible, will be what is this when you do things to it?
Unpacked.
Unpacked, pulled apart, examined closer.
Like the hand motions.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I was. Never mind. Let's keep going.
Playing with cotton candy or
That's
something?
the Tyson theme. Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
As you were talking, I was thinking about how in Exodus 19, he gives them the formal parts of the covenant where he says, remember that I have freed you, and now you're being called to be my people, especially my treasured possession, and that you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So they're supposed to do this.
All good things.
Yes. But then God comes and they experience his holiness. So how does holiness fit with the Ten Commandments?
I think it's the beginning of the expression of this is how you are holy. This is how you are righteous, like I am righteous. If you're going to be a nation and a people who are holy, set apart, raised to the next level of purity, like their priests were. Their priests were extra purified ceremoniously.
Mediator between God and man.
Yeah. So then, if they're going to be a mediator between the world and God as a nation of priests, then they should. Then this is the righteous behavior that is expected.
Yeah.
And well, as we said, the first 5 are how we behave with God. And then now we're coming into our passage here, and this is how we behave with each other.
Yeah. Based on
Our understanding of God and who he is.
Yeah.
It's the outflow. The understanding of who God is and his holiness, we're going to behave in that way as well, or at least try. And the outflowing of that is how we treat our fellow man.
Along those lines, the first part of our passage here in chapter 20, verse 12, the word honor, the previous stuff has been honoring God in a sense. And now it's speaking of honoring father and mother. It says that your days may be long in the land that your God is giving you, which is interesting and a little bit weird and exceptional because it's, in a sense, I think it's basically the only of the commands that says, do this and get this.
Oh, in a positive sense, rather than you shall not, you shall not, you shall not.
Well, not just that it's a positive command as opposed to you shall not, but it's the only one that has that. Here is the result, the positive benefit of it.
Okay.
And it's connected to how you relate to God, right? Because it's talking about, therefore, it's talking about the Lord gave you this land. He's the one that's giving it to you.
Yeah.
And so you, as you're serving him and loving him, and then you're honoring your parents and the way you treat others around you, that it's all connected. This is what I'm saying.
Especially insofar as God's authority, first for the next authority, and insofar as that what we experience in life is mom and dad, at least it's supposed to be. And so parents is like the next level of this is how you work in the world. This is how you show respect. This is how you, and so honoring them is an outgrowth of that and is meant to, I think, go from there. The word honor there is a word of weight and gravity, and it means to busy oneself eagerly. So like to be busy about what your mom and dad say and obeying is what results in your days being long in the land your God is giving you. Which means with all these, there's much more going on than just the little principle that we're seeing. Honor father and mother. Okay, great. Okay, I got that. Well, no, you don't really, but it's much more than that.
I remember when I was, I think, around 16, and I remember very clearly being taught that if I honor my father and my mother, I am also then honoring God.
Sure.
I'm honoring the authority that he's put directly over me.
Right.
And so then I got to this place where I was mentally making the decision, like if I want to, I really didn't want to honor my parents, like most of us in our teenage years don't want to honor our parents, at least the teenagers I know. And I remember getting to the point to where I thought, all right, I do want to honor God. I love God. I do want to honor him. I don't want to honor my parents, but I will, because that is ultimately honoring God. And that's who I do want to love and honor. And I remember my relationship with my parents, like very clearly shifting and changing in that season.
I think a lot of times when we want to honor our parents because it says we have to do that, we're doing that because we want a certain outcome. We got like an agenda. Like if I do this, then this is going to happen. Well, God has said, yes, something will happen if you do that. But don't forget it's tied to your relationship with me is what God is saying.
When I came to understand that, and it really was put in my heart, like then I really benefited from it.
And a lot of times our agendas fall short of the understanding that this is how we should relate with God. It just, if I honor them, if I honor my mom and dad, then we'll have peace in the home and I'm not going to get in trouble.
Right.
So it's like a negative outcome or a positive outcome just for me. It's a self-centered thing.
Right.
But God's trying to remind us that it's way more than that. It's way more than just you. So it kind of goes against our own nature. It goes against what we're really wanting inside. Like if I honor, then I'm going to get something out of it. But God says this is much bigger than just you.
Yeah. And we can keep going. Like not murdering is honoring God. Not committing adultery is honoring God. Not stealing is honoring God.
Let's stick on this for a second, though.
Sure.
In verse 12, the reason why I think the days are long in the land that your God's giving you as a result of honoring your father and mother is because when we learn those kinds of the submission to authority that you guys were talking about, when we learn that from mom and dad, then we learn how it works in the world because there are authorities everywhere you go. There's government, there's school, there is law enforcement, a job, and kids leaving the house don't do well if they don't honor those authorities.
Yeah.
Right. So it's it's actually preparation for how you live in the world in a way that fits with the second half of that verse 12. So just wanted to get that in. So you shall not murder. This is the first of 3 in a row in 13, 14, and 15. There are just 2 words in the Hebrew, and they're both you shall nots, which others are too, but it's just 2 words. So there's a punctuated kind of emphasis on the don't murder, don't commit adultery. It's hard to, is there a one word way to, don't adulterate, I guess. Don't steal. So it's the first of those 3. And like we talked about a bit with honoring father and mother, it means much more than we think it does, especially as it's unpacked in the rest of the Torah, rest of the first 5 books of the Bible, and the Mosaic Law, and then throughout the rest of the Bible too.
Even Jesus said, "You've heard it say, do not murder."
Right.
But I say.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he expands it out.
And he
Yeah.
and in a sense he goes inward because it's an internal thing, but he applies it to more. Yes. So murder generally means one human killing another. Almost all the time, but not quite. Almost always violence involved. Sometimes in the Old Testament, it's negligence or something like that. It's never used of humans killing animals. It's never used in war or capital punishment.
Or self-defense.
Or self-defense. Thank you. That's on our notes. Yes. I think that's important and helpful to,
It is.
to say.
This is difference.
Because-
This is a huge difference from what we're thinking.
It's a huge difference what?
People go to this and they ascribe this to so many other things that you just mentioned, but that word doesn't mean that. That
Meaning
means
they use this
to
commandment to say all
all
forms
forms of violence, all forms
of
of
any kind of killing
Is-
should never happen.
right. And that's a misinterpretation of what
Agreed. Yeah.
is being actually written there.
Yeah. And so it's most often a premeditated thing as well. I don't think we mentioned that. So it's premeditated, usually is involving violence, and it's not used of killing animals. And that's worth saying because we eat them,
Right.
which sounds crazy to say out loud in public but we do. We eat them, which means we have to kill them.
It sounds crazy to say we eat animals. Is that we?
I don't know.
I mean,
2024, it's
it
not
does.
crazy.
yeah.
But we live in a
people-
world
right.
where we go to our grocery store and we have zero idea or understanding of all the stuff that happens before that. That's what I mean by that.
And some people who actually do, but that's kind of skewed, they take this and they run with it. And
Sure.
they misinterpret it and apply this to other things that it shouldn't be applied to.
Yeah.
You know, there's people in our church that raise animals and chickens and cows and they do all this stuff and they're laughing at us right now. They're laughing at us.
Thank you. That's good. All right. So another thought I have here with the you shall not murder is that also means the other side of that is we need to be people who are pro-life happening, and that God is a procreative God.
Right.
And that was the design in the first place.
Life is important to God.
Absolutely.
And it should be important to us.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very short verse here. You shall not murder. But there's a whole lot to unpack there.
Yep.
And I think a big part of that is to understand that God values life.
Yeah,
In
I've heard
many
some
ways.
people talk about this command, and the act of murdering a person is the ultimate blaspheme, the ultimate what's that word? I'm
Acting like God.
No, like it's the image of God. It is the image of God. We are the image of God. We're made in the image of God. So then to kill the image of God is the ultimate blaspheme, the ultimate desecration.
Of God's purposes in the world. And,
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like let's say we were in this religion and we had this idol and we came and worshiped this idol. It would be a huge offense for someone to come and spray paint it or tear it up. And so now that image is here.
Right.
The image of God. So for us to murder one another is the ultimate blaspheme and desecration of that image.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is, in a sense, we think of that as just a horizontal thing.
Yeah.
Like it's against the person, which of course it is.
Right.
But it's ultimately
it goes
against
this way.
God, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were talking about in the other commandment.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger than that.
Yeah. Speaking of a lot bigger and much more involved than just the two words in the Hebrew, verse 14 is, you shall not commit adultery. There's a lot to say here, but let's not say it all. It basically means no sexual activity outside of marriage.
Right.
And there's kind of an extensive argument to make here, but even just within Mosaic law, Exodus and Leviticus, God speaking to Moses says, okay, here's more of what I mean by don't commit adultery. No fornication, which is an old-timey word for anything extramarital, including premarital. No bestiality, no incest, and then no lying with a man as with a woman. Which is to say, even within just the Mosaic law, God speaking to Moses makes clear that it means, we think of adultery oftentimes as something happening within a marriage and someone has an affair or something like that.
Mm-hmm. We try to limit it as tight as it could be.
Sure.
So that we could justify other behavior.
Right, as if that's the goal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to living in as pure and holy and righteous a way that incorporates all of what God intends by saying that.
Like Paul talks about the spirit, the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law.
Right. And we could talk much more about this and how Jesus and Paul especially, but how the New Testament writers and Jesus unpack these to include a whole bunch of spirit stuff. Yeah. Anything else you want to say here?
I think it builds more on what we've been saying from the previous commands. If God sees that authority is important, then we need to honor our father and mother. If he sees that life is important, we shouldn't murder. And here, marriage is important, and so we
Hold it in honor.
We should hold it in honor.
And not just to don't do this, but
we should give it value. We should, because in their culture, in that day and time, these things were people didn't think of these things. They just did whatever they wanted to do, and we're living in a day and age the same way. People just do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And God says, no, if you're going to honor me, these are things that you got to do. And so it's building on one another.
And we see more image of God stuff here too. If you go back to creation, he made them male and female. And together they're the image of God. So then to commit adultery is breaking a piece of that imagery as well.
And so we have to honor or find value in marriage just because God did and he established it. Mm-hmm. We should respect that.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice. God commanded it.
Well, it's how he made it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that's how it actually works.
Right.
Because Genesis 1 and 2, this is how life thrives.
Right.
And so these commands are like, hey, if you get outside of this life thriving prescription, then that's breaking these laws is when you get outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Eighth commandment, verse 15, you shall not steal. Just like the previous two, it's just two words, which
No steal.
has extra emphasis. This one is interesting because there's no object for the stealing. It says, you shall not steal. Okay, steal what? Like what am I supposed to not steal?
It's almost open-ended.
Yes. And I think on purpose, you'd have to make this argument a little bit backwards, as I am going to do in the sermon. But backwards meaning, anyway, it means nothing and everything. I shouldn't have said nothing. It means don't steal anything. That's what I was thinking. And everything is in that category of stuff that cannot be stolen and should not be stolen.
Right.
Can we?
I believe you.
We understand.
Me saying that weird thing that I just said.
We got you.
Do not steal.
Yes, there's no object to it.
Right.
And to steal meant don't carry away, especially by stealth or something.
So I can steal Bob's stuff if I leave it at Bob's house. How am I going to do that? Just to lay claim to it. Your truck is now mine.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to come get it.
Do you have truck
Can you carry it away?
covetousness? It incorporates anything and everything, stealing people, including kidnapping. The same word is used elsewhere in Old Testament to talk about no kidnapping. So it does include that. It also includes verses elsewhere in the Old Testament, that word to not take others' property. So the idea of private property even is included in this one command.
You know what's interesting about you know, real quick, short rabbit trail. I promise, short. You mentioned no kidnapping.
Sure.
And in the Mosaic Law, the consequence of kidnapping is capital punishment. Like, if you're going to take their life, in a sense, like
Yes.
from their family, from their system, from everything, you're going to take theirs, like yours will be taken.
Yeah.
And so it's this do not murder and steal kind of wrapped up together. When you kidnap a person, it's kind of like murdering them.
And it requires restitution,
Yeah.
payment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, rabbit trail over.
Okay. Verse 16, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Just a bunch of legal language. Don't lie in any form that is short of the truth, whether it's saying something about someone or something or not saying something. So it's all forms of that at all. It's legal language, and it means don't pervert justice by skewing somehow. What do you want to say about this?
Nothing.
Okay.
I'm cool.
Cool.
I do like at the
I
end.
feel like you're bearing false witness a little bit because
What?
there's more to be
What?
said that you don't want to say. And
Yeah,
No,
because
I don't have any.
at the end of the verse it says who we shouldn't bear false witness against.
Yeah,
Our neighbor.
right.
And then you jump to Luke, and the Pharisees asking Jesus, who's
is my neighbor?
my neighbor? And Jesus basically says, everybody.
Did he say it just like that?
Just like that.
Hey, everybody.
Even the people that we don't like or enemies or people we consider vile or whatever, because the Samaritans were vile. So we can't bear false witness or harm the reputation of anyone around us, even those we don't like.
See, I didn't need to say anything. Bob's got it.
Boom. Looking up here, there's a play, I think it's in Exodus. I'm not exactly sure. But the word neighbor, even in Exodus, is used in a way that is not just a reference to one's Jewish Israelite brother. Yeah. Within Exodus, even when it's talking about when you go to get the Egyptian stuff, it refers to neighbor in that way. Yes. It's Exodus 3. Each woman shall ask of her neighbor and any woman who lives in her house for silver and gold and clothing, and you shall plunder the Egyptians. So the Egyptians themselves within Exodus 3 are spoken of as a neighbor.
Which they probably weren't next door neighbors, because it talks about how the Israelites were given the land of Goshen.
They weren't in the same place where they.
It wasn't
Right.
the literal English sense of neighbor, like next door neighbor.
Right.
But they had to go to another part of the city.
Which is to say, our definition of the person who lives next to you is the wrong one. And the newer, more restrictive one
right.
Yes,
in that sense. Yeah.
Right.
So the word neighbor is much broader.
Yeah.
And so everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone.
What you said about error.
Air what? Brand of shoe? Air One.
It's for my South Green friends. Just trying to.
Jordan Air Ones.
Wow. That is special. Okay. Last one. You shall
one.
not covet your neighbor's house, wife, male servant, female servant, ox, donkey, or anything that is, again, your neighbor's.
Right.
And neighbor shows up 1, 2, 3, 4 times in the last 2 commandments. And the word covet there isn't just covet the stuff and things externally. It's really actually all about the internal thing that creates the external behavior and action.
Yeah.
It's the desire inwardly that is happening externally. So we have less actually technically fewer than 2 minutes to apply this and say something to finish up. What do we want to say about applying this?
The thing is, there's application throughout the text.
It is itself.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's a whole lot there.
Yeah.
I think one big idea for me is the sense of righteousness, the sense of wanting to honor God also extends to our neighbors, as we pointed out.
In thought, word, and deed, and how we behave, and they
And these
experience us.
And these last 5 commandments make it very clear.
And
To obey God, to follow God, to be a holy nation means all of this horizontal relationship stuff has to be good too.
Right.
And because Christ is the only one that was able to fulfill all these and obey all these commandments, and he is the only one that enables us to do what you just said.
That's right. Boom, applied.
Yes. As the Spirit applies that.
Right.
Yeah. The moral law in the 10 Commandments is fascinating to me, in particular because the things that you just said, they still all apply today
Right.
in a whole bunch of ways that extend far beyond what we think they do, that actually are the way that we create families, societies, churches, everything, that do fruitful, God glorifying stuff. That is holy nation kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Lord, help us do this. Amen. We out.